everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Equinox Roundtable. March 2021 marks a year of coronavirus lockdowns and protocols. It has affected everyone at our university, faculty, professors, and students alike, on multiple dimensions. Today, we are meeting with President Christopher Capuano to reflect over the events over the past year and how FDU has adapted in a year like no other. Thank you, President Capuano, for joining us in this discussion.
Good morning.
And the past year for FDU was full of many policy actions and shifts. And we're sure that these decisions weren't easy to make either. So we'd like to take it back to a year ago, or the first few coronavirus updates. Here, the coronavirus is in the United States, and many things about it are still unknown, especially its risk level. So the first COVID notice was sent February 28th, which first barred international travel for university purposes. And then another big announcement came soon on March 20th, where it was announced that the rest of the spring semester will be taught remotely. So from the time between acknowledging the virus and the decision to move the spring to remote instruction, what was your thought process?
So when, as you noted, in February, we realized that we might have a problem in this country. So we first determined that there was a problem when we learned that in the UK, where we had students studying at our campus at Roxton, that there was already a lot of anxiety about the virus and the likelihood that it would spread to the US. In fact, it was likely in the US already, even at that time, even though there probably wasn't as much discussion about it in February in the US as there was in March, obviously. So that's when we actually began to get to become very concerned about it. And as you noted, we made a decision to bring back the students that were studying there earlier rather than later, because we did not want to create any problems with them concerning flights, getting flights, or not being permitted to fly back. In fact, it was a close call, as it turned out, that there were a number of students that managed to get on as a group onto one flight, and then there were a few that were left behind, for a few days. So that's when it became a reality for us that we had to restrict international travel and make the decision basically to bring all the students home from Roxton. I was actually traveling in March with some of our athletic teams. They were on spring break and playing down in Florida, so I was actually at some of those games. And that's when, things, not so much in Florida, but, in New York and in the region that we're in, started to really become a concern. So we knew we were going to have to do something, because we were hearing already from the governor in New York and even the governor in New Jersey, Murphy, that they were likely to issue executive orders restricting various things. So we knew actually during spring break, I learned during spring break when I was in Florida that we would have to do something. And my thought process was, because we were on spring break and many students were away already, that instead of asking them to come back and then telling them maybe days or a week later, you got to leave, we made the decision. And we had the benefit of being on spring break, because I know some schools were on spring break a week earlier and they actually ended up bringing students back. And then a week later saying everyone's got to go home. So I wanted to avoid that. I didn't want to have people have to come back and then ask them days or a week later to leave again. So we made the decision, if you recall, at the end of that spring break week, we told people that we're not going to reopen. Now, some students were able to come back because they needed to come back out of their dorm rooms to get belongings, their computers. I think most students had their computers, but to get whatever they needed. Students who live farther away did not come back right away, and they didn't need to. We kept their belongings all, in their rooms and safe, and we told them, at some point, and that happened later, I think in May, you can come back and get your stuff on a schedule, and they did. So that was the first decision, and it was based on the fact that, we didn't want, the senior team didn't want students to be any more inconvenienced than they were going to be. So we didn't want this come back and then leave, so we told everybody, just don't bother coming back. So as it turned out, that was the right call.
course. And naturally, after one semester is done, there's the next. So there was already some apprehension of what to expect in the summer, in the fall of 2020, where the coronavirus infection rate was rising, and there was still hope for a vaccine. It wasn't yet a reality. So what were the various factors that had to be considered during this time, and how did it differ from the spring's decision process?
Yeah. So in the spring, we knew, as we just noted, what was going to be. I didn't envision at any point during the spring that we would reopen the campuses again. I just didn't see that being likely. So the concern shifted right away to the summer. We had to make decisions about the summer, and we also didn't see things improving, going into the summer. So that's when we decided to tell everyone that the entire summer was going to be remote, online. So I say online, but there's a difference between fully online courses, which are asynchronous, and online, as many of you are doing courses today remotely, where you're still meeting, synchronously using technology like Zoom. So there's still face-to-face interaction to distinguish it from what a fully online course is, that in many instances doesn't involve any video, any live or real-time video in the way that we're doing right now. So we made the decision to go online in the summer, and I think, if you recall, we introduced some special pricing because we knew students and families were experiencing financial hardships, and that people were losing jobs and not working for other reasons. So we felt that it was our obligation to do that. So, and we're doing that again this summer, by the way, which you may know. Same pricing. You could take a course at full price, and then all subsequent courses undergraduate are 50% off. So, the goal there was to help students and families continue their studies if they wish to do that in the summer. Given that it was going to be online, it may be easier to do that. They didn't have to be on campus or come to campus. And we wanted to make it more affordable as students wanted to take more courses. And as it turned out, many did. So, and then, right away in May and June, we started focusing on the fall. We were hopeful because the governor at that point had issued a phased plan, if you recall. Actually, he called them stages, stage 1, 2, and 3. All of our plans in higher ed in New Jersey were all predicated on getting to stage 3, if you recall, but we never got there. We still haven't officially gotten to stage 3 in New Jersey. I mean, there have been changes, but we never got any farther than stage 2. So we were all sitting in March waiting for the governor to say, we're now stage 3, schools can reopen. He didn't do that. What he did do, though, is he said, we're staying at stage 2, and he relaxed a few things, and he said, okay, colleges and universities can use their stage 3 plans with some modification, and they can reopen under stage 2. But he did that very late in August, so late that it was beyond the time that we felt we needed to make a decision. So if you recall, we decided we would start the fall term a week early. We would end the fall term at Thanksgiving, meaning the finals would be over before Thanksgiving. The goal there was to get people done, knowing that the virus we would see an uptick, a spike again during the fall, which is normally what you see with the start of the flu season. So we thought that was in everyone's best interest to start a little early, condense the fall term into fewer weeks, and end by Thanksgiving. So we had planned to do that anyway. One thing we were hoping to do was 3 weeks into the fall term, we were going to pivot, if you recall, to more in-person classes. But because things didn't get a lot better, and we didn't have many students on campus, many didn't return to campus. They could have if they wanted to, but many decided they didn't want to, I think for good reason. We decided to stay, with the exception of a few classes, we decided to stay mostly remote, with our classes in the fall. So our concern, as you can imagine, was about safety. We didn't want, to create any infection that wasn't necessary, meaning we didn't have to do certain things like fall sports and things like that would have increased risk significantly. So our focus was on maintaining the health and safety of the campus community. So that's what we did in the fall. The good thing about that is it allowed us to do more in the winter term than we normally do. The winter is typically 3 weeks, right, in January, but this allowed us actually to do really 2 sessions, a long one and a short one. And I think that was good. And we did some special pricing during the winter, if you recall, too, which encouraged a lot of students, to take classes in the winter. They actually started right after Thanksgiving and went right up till the end of January. So I think that worked out reasonably well. Unfortunately, the winter got bad again, if you recall, with COVID. Our region and other regions across the country started to see spikes. And because of that, even though we were planning to do more in-person classes this semester, this spring, we delayed the start of that by 3 weeks, if you recall, because we were concerned about, infection, even though we were testing and doing all of that. So 3 weeks into the spring term, we allowed courses that were scheduled to meet in person in a hybrid mode or otherwise. We allowed them to do so. Some are doing that now. It wasn't going to be very many if everyone did what they had planned. It was only going to be about 30% of our classes. My sense is it's probably less than that, because I know a lot of faculty contacted students in their classes and asked them if they wanted to do in person at all. And we told the faculty, if no students want to do in person in your class, meaning they're okay continuing with the remote, with the Zoom, then you don't have to do in person. Because again, there's still infection on the campuses. We're still seeing, cases every day, which is a concern. I'm happy we've managed to keep the positivity rate around 1%. Right now it's about 1.1%. I wish it were lower. And, the fact that we have some cases every day is a concern, but it's happening in some counties. Actually in New Jersey are starting to see spikes again, even they're in the red, when they weren't for a while. So the virus is still out there. It's still out there. We have variants now in our region. But the good news is we have vaccinations. We have vaccines, right? And I think it'll soon be the case that many students will be able to get a vaccination. And as I noted in my announcement the other day, I strongly encourage everyone to get a vaccination. If everyone is vaccinated, when we come back in the fall, we're going to be in a much better shape, and we'll be able to do much more on campus than we will if many are not vaccinated. Because if they're not vaccinated, then you have to be concerned about transmissibility and people still becoming infected and getting sick potentially, right? Or going home and getting other people sick. So the name of the game right now is get that vaccine as soon as you can. Don't worry about, and I think come April and May, you're going to see people that are 18, 20 some year olds in New Jersey will be able to get the vaccine if you haven't already. Some have gotten it already. So if you're looking, hard enough, you can get it now, actually, believe it or not, in some locations. So that's the word of the day now. Tell everybody to go out and get vaccinated. It's very, very important. That's how we're going to reach herd immunity, not only on our campuses, but in our region. And the vaccines now, the data is starting to come back. They're effective. They're very efficacious. They're preventing people from getting sick. Very few people that have gotten the vaccine are becoming ill. If they're even exposed, we don't know for sure, but nobody's becoming ill, which means the vaccines are working. So spread the word. That's good news.
Of course. And you actually answered one of our questions about the process of this spring semester. So overall, in the past year, what are some notable obstacles or even setbacks in this process, or even what could be some positive parts that came out of it?
So the setbacks I noted, there were some things that that we would have liked to do that we didn't do. I wish we had more students on campus. I wanted more students on campus in the fall, and I certainly wanted more students on. We do have more students on campus in the spring, but I was hoping for even more. So that was somewhat of a setback. not a setback, but a little bit of a disappointment. And again, we had to do what was safe. But that's something I had hoped would go better, certainly this spring, that we would have more students on campus and we would have more in-person classes. But in light of the fact that there's still plenty of virus out there and even new forms of the virus, and not everyone is vaccinated yet, I think playing it safe like we did as a community, I think people were all making good decisions. The faculty were making good decisions. The students were making good decisions. I think in the end, we did as much as we could, and we managed it well. Some of the positives, I think, for sure, I mean, that are related to the pandemic, and I think a lot of companies now and many industries are seeing that, we're able to do work remotely that we, never did remotely. So I think there are going to be some things that services and units at the university that will probably continue to work remotely even after the pandemic. I'll give you an example. Our whole finance division, I mean, many of them come to work and they work on a computer all day long, sitting in their office at the university. Well, they don't need to be sitting in their office at the university. So I think we're going to be able to free up some space and do other things with the space that maybe those offices are using. And they may go into what's called a hoteling arrangement, where they have some space, but it'll be a smaller amount of space, and only some employees will come in, every day or every week, and they'll alternate, that kind of thing. So a lot of lessons learned in that regard. I think we can streamline our business. All businesses are doing this. You don't necessarily need as much bricks and mortar for support units. Stuff that's, forward facing, dean of students, that kind of stuff. Of course, they need to be on campus, but not things that students don't see. And, like people that are working in records and registration and just handling a lot of the day-to-day management of the data and things. They don't necessarily need to be right on campus all the time. So that's a plus that came out of it. I think because of all the investments we've made in classroom technologies and in the faculty in terms of doing more online, I think it's going to be a shot in the arm to our online division. We're now saying we can reach audiences farther away by doing more things in a hybrid or online mode. So I think that's a positive, that came out of it. The summer schedule, as I told you, I think may become a new normal for us. If this seems to be encouraging more students to take courses in the summer, complete their degrees sooner, and finish with less debt, certainly that should be a change we should make, right? And maybe this is sort of a segue to doing a 4-year degree in 3 years, possibly. If you go fall, spring, summer, fall, spring, summer, fall, spring, 8 semesters in 3 years, right? For people that want to do that. We do that in Vancouver, at our Vancouver campus. I think the winter session was something we're going to have to take a look at. It seemed to be very popular. A lot of students, way more students took courses this winter than ever before. So maybe that's the online term, along with the summer, more online, so people can go home and still take courses without having to be on campus. So a lot of lessons came out of this. With every crisis comes an opportunity, if not more than one opportunity. So I think we are going to do things differently because of what we learned, having gone through this. So it's not all bad. There's some good, I think, as I think you were suggesting.
Yes, it's certainly interesting how there can be a silver lining.
Yeah.
And, and last but certainly not least, what message would you like to give to the FTU community who endured the past year with us?
Well, if you read my communications, I always start with the same line, and that is how incredibly proud I am of the entire community for their resilience, their ability to adapt. I know people are under a lot of stress, not just students, but even the faculty and the staff are under a lot of stress because everybody had to continue doing what they were doing, but doing it differently. And if I had to give, a grade to everybody, remember I am still on the faculty and I used to teach, it would be an A+. I would give everyone an A+ for the job that they've done. And this could have been a lot worse for all of us, right? So unfortunately, I know many members of our community, they did lose friends and loved ones. When you look at the numbers, how could that not be the case? But The truth is, it could have been a lot worse for members of our community, and it could have been a lot worse for the university. And this is an example of the fact that it really takes everyone to be successful. It's not just the president or one or two or three people. I mean, my job is to make decisions and hopefully make good decisions. But without everyone, doing their part, which they did, we would not have had the success we did. So my message is thank you, thank you, thank you. We could not have done it without you. Students, faculty, staff, even our alumni stepped up and helped out. We have a lot of alumni now that are giving donations to the university. Most of that is going to help students with scholarship monies, emergency funds, these kinds of things. So you've heard the phrase before, it takes a village. Well, sometimes it does take a village, and we did just that during this pandemic. So I couldn't be more thankful than I am for the work everyone has done, and everybody really came together to make this a success.
Absolutely, and I'm sure I speak for everyone that we certainly all agree. Thank you so much, President Capuano, for joining the Equinox in this discussion. And I hope you and all the viewers continue to stay safe and healthy.
Thank you.